The Overwatch PTR, useless. Fucking useless data. League of Legends, same thing. Unless you make or you encourage pro teams to get on that server, play under serious match conditions, you need to incentivize players to actually test this stuff properly. Like, I want to play Yoru. I'm going to load into a game on the PTR. Ah, shit, someone had a SSD. They pick Yoru. Well, fuck it. I don't want to play anymore. And I see this happens all the time, right? You cannot get information there. So that is why these changes don't all happen at once. That's why people need to be patient. All right. Well, we also have another couple of things on the horizon. We have been seeing in esports over the last few weeks, essentially teams fucking Tokyo drifting around corners, getting sideways, fucking gatting each other with the frenzy or the stinger.
Yeah.
It takes over round 2 and round 3 in many cases, right? You win the pistol, you're
like
still
5,
going
man.
up against fucking stingers. And so the first 3 rounds and the way the economy works gets put in a bit of a weird position. I'll be honest with you. It is quite strange. So we've heard from the developers, Nitr0 specifically. And if you liked League of Legends, you might actually remember this guy. He's obviously been around with Riot for quite a while. He had this to say about changes coming to the frenzy, which you already know.
I'm not sure that's going to be the case now.
Yeah, the frenzy will get a price increase in the next patch coming in a few days. It'll go from 4 to 500.
As we head.
Pretty short and sweet. So increase in price, ostensibly, gentlemen, and that would then make it impossible to buy armor alongside of the frenzy in round 1. Would that, in theory, make the Ghost now an option against sort of people just, zooming at you with the frenzy?
Oh. So
hypothetically, it should, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
all
I
say.
have my say for it too. Is if you actually look at some of the matches right now, even in the past week for VCTs in NA or even in Korea or EU or Latin America, Brazil, Turkey, etc. People are actually even buying frenzies, no armor, so they could get abilities. So to put it at the issue the issue was at that point is that you're able to still get frenzies and armor. That was the past argument, but now you see that it's frenzies, no armor with utilities. So to be able to put it at 500 will now narrow down the amount of abilities that you'll be able to have in the match. So I think that's going to help in that aspect. But I think where it gets a little bit more difficult now is the frenzy is still very strong when you're going to be 5 players or 3 players just running together with frenzies on mid-range battles. That's where it's a little bit
on
iffy.
like a non-equal, like on a round where you can actually afford armor, right? So
Yeah.
like, let's say like you're forced into like a half buy and you can still get stinger full armor and be fucking nasty.
That's right. So I think even Nitr0 brought it up. Like the hot take is at his point is not really about. He doesn't find that the frenzy is that overpowered. I kind of believe that it still is because of the range. I don't think it's necessarily about the pricing of it. I do agree with the community that 500 is a great start because it allows, again, less abilities into pistol rounds. Now, the second RNG aspect of it is that at super long range, or when you're bursting in 2 shots or 3 shots like Zom does, or Sick does, it's still very, very good to be able to take your opponents down.
I saw Safe in like this guild match kill someone across the map. It was like,
That's it.
Be long on Icebox. Safe is just sat on the other side of a one-way and he's just banged some guy out like all the way down towards attacker spawn. I'm like, oh, what the hell, dude?
That's right. So that's why when you're looking at certain strats, depending on like the compositions that you have, is that some of the teams that have a jet will just buy a sheriff instead because they want to use the opportunity of if you're going frenzy no armor and at that distance you may have more chance that they get the kills with a sheriff versus a ghost. So I think now it's looking at the range maybe of the frenzy is going to be another added layer that could maybe help things out because I know we're going to see the SOT a little bit later talking about the stingers, but I do like the fact that at mid-range and close range, a frenzy and a stinger is still very effective and very deadly because those bullets just fly out and you don't have that much in your clip and you have that much to reload either. I think after you reload like 2 or 3 times, you have no more clips left for your frenzy. You have no more clips left with your stinger. So what does that do and what does that force you to do is to play more close range, more aggressive, to get these off angles or the high risk, high rewards type of plays that will pay off if you're investing into that frenzy or investing into that stinger. But it shouldn't have that same effect that with a full range across mid map or a long range map, I could still be able to spray down and kill my
Okay.
opponent at that distance. I think that is the issue.
I mean, it's not even spraying, but they're not spraying down at long range, right? You yourself just said, Vansily,
They're
it's like a
frenzy,
couple
correct.
taps.
They're frenzy,
Yeah.
correct. But the stinger, you still see where they just like mow down halfway and still get the kill, right? So
Okay.
So there's another thing as well that was said that I think is really important because we saw Nitr0 mention it as well. Because I went through all of the clips in Nitr0 for the news and all that kind of stuff. But he said that when it comes to running and gunning, that's something that they want to actually keep up with both the frenzy and the stinger. Because as SMGs, they should be better to use when running and gunning. Bear in mind that those run and gun changes that came to the rifles were just to the rifles. It was just to the Bulldog, Guardian, Vandal, and Phantom. So it doesn't affect the stinger. It doesn't affect the frenzy, which I think is one of the reasons why the stonks in those two guns have gone up quite dramatically ever since.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear them go, actually, we want to keep this part, at least keep a close eye on it. If it's still bad, we'll adjust it. But we want to make sure that these run and gun weapons stay as
Why the
run and
fuck
gun
would
weapons.
you buy them if they're
exactly it.
garbage at running
That's
gun?
exactly what I was gonna say. Like to tie into what you guys are saying. It's like if you're nerfing it for the running gunning, there's no point buying the weapon for that close range, high risk, high reward type of play that you want to do with a stinger or a frenzy. So that's why, like, I think it's still pretty decent to keep that running and gunning for those SMGs and those frenzies. It just forces you to play a little bit more smart as a player if you're playing against those guys when you have Vandals, for example, in round number 3. So I think that's still okay. I think again, it's about that range.
This is also a pretty proportionate response by a developer to this kind of outcry, right? I kind of like this. They're not just kowtowing to the community that are getting upset about this kind of game style, but I think that we can all agree that we probably don't want to sort of see like these weapons be disproportionately powerful, right?
Exactly.
I think that's why Riot, their first port of call is the cost, because they want to say, listen, you can this strategy can be available to you as a player, this running and gunning style. We want to enable that because it gives us some fucking contrast in this game, and everyone's just using an M4A4 or an AK-47. But we want to make this costly. I would almost argue that you could jack up the price of these weapons even just a little bit more. The problem is you don't want to have like some weapon like your pistols costing 500 and then everything else costing at least 2K between 2 and 3. You really do need to. There needs to be this sort of this middle substrata of weapons, but maybe you just need to find like more jack of all trade, king of none weapons that fill that gap, because it seems like if running and gunning is an option and these weapons are so effective at doing that, you could probably just increase the price and say, hey, listen, you can either run and gun or you can play a more static, more accurate style. Both of these strategies might be comparable in terms of cost or so I think that messing with the cost matrix there is makes the most sense. If you're nerf running and gunning, then you really limit players' options in Valorant, and I think that's never a good game development
Real
decision.
quick,
Yeah,
they're buffing the Marshal as well. Bear in mind that they've said that too. So that kind of goes into what you're saying about if the Frenzy's still good at what they do, and we'll make the Marshal a bit stronger. You have a bit more of a rock paper scissors going on, especially in lower buys.
Yeah,
that'll be actually quite interesting for the snipers of the teams too. But just to say like what I said 2 weeks ago, guys, it's like we've just had the nerfs for the changes, not necessarily the nerfs for the Phantom and the Vandal. Everything else is going to be coming. You can't really throw everything out into one shot because it's going to break the game, and you don't really have much to like base on these changes and gather that data from Riot's perspective.
Yes.
So now you have the changes for the rifle first. We're testing things out with the SMGs. We're testing the price of the frenzy, and then we'll see if there's going to be more changes and buffs or nerfs or tweaks that we have to do in the weaponry level. Like I said before, like in other different games that has the money system like CS, they haven't fixed everything on day one, and still today there's still issues on pricing, for example, or debates around the AUG and everything like that as well. So let's be patient about it and see how this game moves forward. And it's good. Like we talked about how open the conversation is between Riot and the player base. So it's good to have that constructive criticism more than the bitching.
All right, last thing I'll say about this is that people maybe wonder why these changes take a long time. And data needs to be collected from the live server. which means that these changes need to come one at a time and they need to be monitored.
Yeah.
Because there is no value in providing a public test realm. PTRs don't fucking work because it's impossible to gather meaningful data from a server where there are no stakes. There's no reason for players to play properly on a public test realm. All they do is they fucking log in, they try and pick the newest released agent first, and if they don't get it, they fucking leave the game. And if they do stay in the game, they fuck around. Like the Overwatch PTR, useless. Fucking useless for data. League of Legends, same thing. Unless you make or you encourage pro teams to get on that server, play under serious match conditions, you need to incentivize players to actually test this stuff properly. Like, I want to play Yoru. I'm going to load into a game on the PTR. Ah, shit, someone had a SSD. They pick Yoru. Well, fuck it. I don't want to play anymore. And I see this happens all the time, right? You cannot get information there. So that is why these changes don't all happen at once. That's why people need to be patient. You can literally just take a couple more developmental leaps in terms of your frontal lobes, and then you sort of realize that there is a good reason that these things actually take time and you don't get everything that you want straight away.